A black Pearl Harbor hero could lose his aircraft carrier. The hull is already designated CVN-81, the future USS Doris Miller, a historic first for a black enlisted sailor. The Navy is now weighing whether to rename it for sitting President Donald Trump while the ship is still years from delivery. Will that historic name stay on the fleet's next carrier, or be replaced before the ship ever sails? On December 7, 1941, aboard USS West Virginia, mess attendant third-class Doris Miller, described as a black cook and mess attendant, carried wounded sailors to safety, including his mortally wounded Captain Mervyn Bennion, then manned a .50 caliber anti-aircraft gun without training and was credited with downing at least one enemy aircraft. About 6 months later, President Franklin D. Roosevelt authorized the Navy Cross on May 11, 1942, and Admiral Chester W. Nimitz presented it at Pearl Harbor on May 27, 1942. Initially unnamed in commendations, Miller was identified after pressure from the NAACP, the Pittsburgh Courier, and members of Congress including Senator James M. Meade and Representative John Dingell, after an original Medal of Honor recommendation was denied by Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox. 643 men died with Miller when the escort carrier USS Liscum Bay was torpedoed on December 7, 1943. The date was exactly 2 years after Pearl Harbor. That loss is why veteran advocates say stripping the carrier name would erase more than one man's honor. The ship at the center is CVN-81, a Gerald R. Ford-class carrier still under construction and years from delivery, scheduled for 2034. The Navy announced the name at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam in Hawaii, with Acting Secretary Thomas B. Maudley saying it would honor African Americans of the greatest generation and make Miller the first Black American and first enlisted sailor with a carrier namesake. An earlier frigate, USS Doris Miller FF-1091, already carries his name. No U.S. carrier has ever been named for a sitting president. Carriers have honored deceased presidents, admirals, and distinguished service members, so this change would be a first. The deliberations continued through summer 2026 with no decision made or announced and no comment from the White House, Pentagon, or Navy. White House documents reviewed on rebuilding the Navy and the shipbuilding industrial base refer to the ship only as CVN-81, and no executive order directing a rename to Trump was found. The Navy is described as internally dropping the name USS Doris Miller and using only the hull number while it weighs the choice. Both accounts of the naming agree on the historic intent, even as they differ by 8 days. January 20th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day during the first Trump administration, which matches Navy records from the ceremony at Hickam, versus January 28th, cited in a second report. The vessel is years from delivery, leaving the historic designation in limbo while deliberations continue. Thomas Bledsoe, Miller's great-nephew, said the family was not notified by the Navy and learned of the possible change from news coverage, describing it as a shock that caused concern, uncertainty, and disappointment. The family continues a long campaign for a Congressional Medal of Honor for Miller, dating to the denied recommendation under Secretary Frank Knox, and still championed with a Navy recommendation that has not received White House approval. Veteran Reaction framed it as stripping honor from enlisted sailors broadly. Procedurally, nothing has changed on the hull yet. The question remains whether the historic designation will stand, whether Miller's name would be reassigned or removed entirely, and whether the Medal of Honor effort advances while the namesake itself is under review. With no timeline or formal consultation announced and the family waiting for an official position from the Navy, the Defense Department, and the White House. Like and follow for more stories that matter.